Hello! In this video, you will discover how companies evaluate innovation ideas and select the most promising ones. In fact, companies have many more innovation ideas that they can develop. Their human and financial resources are limited compared to the huge quantity of potential innovation ideas which emerge every year. Choices have to be made about which innovation ideas to support and convert to a funded project and which ideas to drop. The evaluation criteria used by companies varies from industry to industry. You will discover here some of these criteria, but don't hesitate to go further by reading our reference book, Innovation Management and New Product Development. Firstly, market-related criteria can be taken into account. What is the size of the potential market of an innovation? Is there an existing customer base? Is it a growing market? Is it a profitable market? For example, the development of new drugs for the treatment of rare diseases, those which affect fewer than 2,000 people, has been slowed down because of the limited potential market size. Fortunately, recent development of these drugs has been accelerated thanks to more favorable regulation. Secondly, technical criteria can also be considered. Does the company have experience in the technology? Does the company have the necessary skills and facilities? What is the probability of technical success? Innovation ideas which don't meet this criteria are often dropped by companies. Solar vehicles are a relevant example. These electric vehicles, powered completely or significantly by direct solar energy, are technically too immature today and their feasibility is not guaranteed. Thus, these vehicles are today primarily designed for demonstration purposes. Thirdly, the fit of the innovation with the company's strategy should be evaluated. For example, emerging innovation ideas which aren't related to the user's mobility systems are often rejected by car makers. Finally, financial criteria should be taken into consideration even if this criterion is often difficult to assess. The potential revenue and profit generated by the innovation should be calculated. For this purpose, the sales price has to be estimated. It is important to highlight that while all these criteria can be integrated into adapted software, at the end of the selection process, there is always an element of subjective judgment. How to estimate the highest price that a consumer accepts to pay for an innovation? When a company establishes the selling price of an innovation, several elements should be taken into consideration. The price offered by competitors, the cost of the innovation, and the third major element, consumers' willingness to pay for the innovation. This is the maximum price a consumer accepts to pay for an innovation. The willingness to pay for an innovation is not easy to assess, but different methods can be used to make this estimation. Firstly, companies can observe market data of existing products, such as sales records from retail outlets. However, this method is relevant only for incremental innovations, including minor improvement compared to the previous product generation. Secondly, companies can carry out test markets to simulate consumers' potential willingness to pay for an innovation. For example, they can conduct a regional product launch prior to a full launch. The company can also send a new product to a select group of customers before it is released into the full marketplace and gather their feedback. Thirdly, companies can carry out customer surveys and ask respondents to indicate acceptable price directly. One of the applications of customer surveys is psychologically motivated method for estimating willingness to pay. In a simpler version of this method, companies ask consumers the following two questions. Above which price would you definitely not buy the product because you can't afford it or because you didn't think it was worth the money? Below which price would you say you wouldn't buy the product because you would start to suspect the quality? Based on the answers to these two questions, an acceptable price range for consumers can be calculated. If you want to go further and discover more detailed information on these methods, don't hesitate to read the article, A Review of Methods for Measuring Willingness to Pay, listed in our bibliography. Now, please follow these steps to evaluate users' willingness to pay for your innovation. Step 4.1. Define the potential price range to be presented to users. 20 minutes. Define a right price range of potential launch prices for your innovation and divide it into 10 price levels. To define the relevant price range for your innovation, consider the price of a rival product or service. Of course, since it is an innovation, you might not be able to find a direct competing product or service. However, you can find existing products or services which are different but meet the same user need as your innovation. In our example of a sport-related smartphone application, competition comes from an online service offered to connect players to some tennis club as part of the subscription. Considering that this online service is free for subscribers and the price of smartphone applications in general varies between 0 and 5 euros, we have defined 10 price levels between 0 and 5 euros. Once you have defined your product price range, represent it on a blank page. Step 4.2. Carry out interviews with your target users. 1 round and a half. Select 5 people among your friends, colleagues, or members of your family who match the profile of your target users. Carry out a short interview with each of them. Briefly describe your innovations to them and show them the page with your price range. Then, ask them the 2 following questions. Among the presented price levels, above which price would you definitely not buy the innovation because you can't afford it or because you didn't think it was worth the money? Below which price would you say you wouldn't buy the innovation because you would start to suspect its quality? Step 4.3. Represent the acceptable price range for your innovation. 30 minutes. Represent the results of your interviews on the proposed diagram to discover an initial version of the acceptable price range for your innovation. Of course, the number of interviews is insufficient to establish a real launch price for your innovation, but illustrates the importance of evaluating consumers' willingness to pay and provides some initial indications. In our example, we have simulated potential answers which illustrate that proposing our application for free wouldn't generate a poor quality user perception. This is probably due to the success of free applications such as Snapchat. The results also suggest that a price of more than €1 would be too expensive for some users. Have fun and see you soon!